Generation fat.
Are we allowed to use the word fat? Aren't we going to be shamed for fat shaming?
We'll be told off for fat shaming, I'm sure, about this. But we're going to talk to the perfect man on this, because since the pandemic, tens of thousands more children are growing up obese. It's costing the UK £8.7 billion.
Of course, obesity is now the biggest killer and problem on the NHS. Long absences from school because of COVID, a lack of physical activity and unhealthy eating habits during lockdown have been blamed for this huge increase. So, Steve Miller, you know who he is, former presenter of Fat Family. Steve, come on, whose fault is this? Is it the kids, the schools, mum and dad?
Well, I mean, first of all, a word on the fat shaming. This country's got to get over it. We talk about fat shaming. Every time you use the word fat, what do they want us to start saying? Oh, you're a wide load? I mean, it's just ridiculous. I tell you what didn't happen, and this is a serious point. This government did not do, in my opinion, a cost-benefit analysis when they thought about all the terrible stuff they did for our kids during lockdown. And frankly, the result of it has been that we've put a lot of kids now potentially on death row. The report that's out today, what does it say? More kids now are at risk long-term of diabetes, stroke, and some cancers. I thought lockdown for children was horrendous. It suffocated their lives in such a way that we've never known before. It suffocated their learning. It suffocated their movement. I've also got it suffocated their freedom. So what happened was these poor kids were left at home with their parents, and these kids developed these bad habits of eating lots of junk food. And I do have a degree of sympathy with the parents in terms of how difficult that must have been. So actually, the lockdown was a disaster for children. What do we do moving forward? What do we do moving forward is we stop normalising obesity. We start talking about the danger of fat more bluntly. We stop screaming and squealing the words fat shaming every time someone like me uses the word fat. And parents actually start taking more responsibility, because far too many parents do not take responsibility for their children, and they do allow their children to eat too much junk food. And by doing that, they are putting them on death row. I balance that with some superb parents, of course, who do a great job.
It's not just junk food, though, is it, Steve? I mean, we use that phrase, but actually, I think for me, it's the constant grazing. It's the poor school meals. It's too much choice. I think when you have a school meal, you should be given one healthy meal and that's it. And you eat it or you go hungry, frankly. But that's a very old-fashioned view of the world, isn't it? And especially when children get older, so when they're teenagers and they're then able to go and they get in the train home from school, and on every train platform there's a vending machine that is dishing out chocolate bars and crisps. It's really difficult. I'm not excusing parents, because I've got 3 and it's a constant battle to get them to eat less sugar. But it almost sometimes feels like the weight of that industry is absolutely against us.
But what we need to do is we need to learn to regain control. And to regain control, this is where the parents come in. Who's giving the kids the money to spend in the vending machines for a start? I mean, that's the first bit. And what we need to do is we need to look at Japan. Japan have a great culture when it comes to managing obesity and managing child obesity. They're brilliant at it. They don't shy away from the discussion. Children are taught being fat is wrong. Children do receive one healthy school meal, which is great. And generally speaking, you know, it's not a taboo subject to talk about how being fat is totally wrong, because it potentially.
Where do you draw the line between this? Because you've got this body positivity movement, of course, in this country, which I think did a good service to the nation, because it came at a time after sort of the Kate Moss supermodels. It came at a time of saying it may not be normal for you to be a size 6 or a size 8, and that's OK. But somehow, excuse the pun, it ballooned into something greater than that, so that you've got morbidly obese women on the front cover of Cosmopolitan magazine. Somehow we have to get that balance right, Steve. How do we do it?
Well, you see, body positive, I mean, the one thing they do say that I absolutely agree with is that rigid dieting is not good for us. They're absolutely spot on with that, and it can trigger an eating disorder, and they just don't work long term anyway. But the problem is body positive has now become this political animal where it's kind of gone from that sort of, you know, don't diet because it's not good, rigidly, But it's now become this sort of, if you're happy and you're fat, clap your hands. And maybe talk about, maybe they actually want children to sit around singing that.